Hello and welcome back to part two, Lunch with Layne. And we're honored again to be joined by Jason Williams, an attorney in North Carolina, and a good friend of mine from law school. I can say best friend, confidant, certainly one of my legal idols, and has an incredible amount of compassion. Jason, I wanted to tell you this. I was just watching a couple of interviews on YouTube. It's interesting how the analogs work. And both James Baldwin came up, and I know as a journalist, right, someone that did you respect, tremendously. Bertrand Russell also. And,
Hmm.
these are two tremendous minds. And I always thought, like, why don't we talk more about them more, these days? Um,
Right.
yeah. And, it's just telling. So, Jason, I'm putting you're following, not that these are big shoes to fill, James Baldwin. I guess is it Lord Russell, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're following them, and I'm putting you, okay, next on the screen. You're my next YouTube, right, clip that I'm going to
Well,
watch
hey,
here.
I'll give you credit for being able to interview James Baldwin. That's a good get. I thought it was impressive that you got me to appear on this, but to get James Baldwin, that's really great.
It was incredible. Yeah, Dick Cavett and I were fighting, over it. You know, yeah, he got Betty Davis. I got James Baldwin, so we're on it. Um, that being said, oh, Jason, we left it on kind of a cliffhanger a little bit. The other session, you were involved in regard to some children, and it sounded like kind of what we would call a Florida dependency matter. And you're always it always gives me concerns, when I hear about poor children out there. Do you have any quick updates for us about that matter?
Sure, we are still hanging on that cliff. The Department of Social Services filed a petition to remove the five children from the parents, due to the chronic neglect and there's even possible sexual abuse, and not from the parents, but from others. And anyway, so they've been removed. The petitions have not been adjudicated yet. The parents have come in and signed family services agreements. They are willing to work with the Department of Social Services to improve conditions to get the children back. But three of the children are placed with a grandmother. The older two children, unfortunately, they have therapeutic needs and have had to be placed in therapeutic foster placements. But even those have disrupted because of the children's behavior. So it's still very early on in the case, and we're not. We're not going to adjudicate the petition until next month anyway. And it'll probably be many months. The parents are going to need to do a lot of things, and we're going to have to get evaluations of the children and that sort of thing before we'll be able to establish permanence for them.
You had brought up such an interesting matter that we were going to delve into before. It was things that you've encountered in your job, and you said not just encountered, but routinely encountered poverty, lack of education, right? Was it substances sometimes?
Abuse, mental health problems.
Yeah.
Seemingly that's all I deal with at this point. Certainly not every lawyer would has to do this work. Not every lawyer would be cut out to do this work, but it seems like every single one of my cases, which are mostly child welfare at this point. I used to do a lot of criminal law and a lot of family law, but I'm kind of cutting back both of those things. But child welfare, dealing with departments of social services, and also juvenile delinquents, it's just rampant poverty. And I live in Eastern North Carolina, which we have in our judicial district, I think two of the poorest five counties in North Carolina. We have 100 counties, and two of them are part of our judicial district. And of course, the neighboring counties are not very wealthy either. So that's what I deal with, and that's what it feels like I always deal with.
Yeah, and I really applaud your work in the area. Is there any one thing do you think that the justice system can do to help these individuals that may be, stuck in that cycle that you're talking about?
The justice system, I don't know. That's a good question. I think the justice system, at least the part that I participate in, we do what we can. but there's so few resources. And, as you know, there's not a lobby for poor people, no one is picketing the state capitol and asking for resources to be devoted to the poor. Um, you know, and we are rural, and there's just not a lot of opportunity here. But things like mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, we had, well, for example, in my 5 counties, we have 5 counties in this district, and there are only 3 hospitals, um, only one of which had a behavioral health unit, but that closed. That closed 2 years ago. And so now there's nowhere in our 5 counties, which comprise our judicial district, there's not one place to send, someone who's having a mental health crisis. You can't commit somebody in these 5 counties. They have to go out elsewhere. They have to go, several counties away or several towns away to find some place for treatment. And so without that resource, people just don't get treated. So they either end up in our jail or they end up just wandering our street. And those are 2 poor options. 2 poor options.
Yeah, I can only imagine with the COVID template, right? Also, the past year, what we've gone through. Can I ask, you were sharing, you got your COVID shots already. I'm getting my second
Yeah.
one today. And, a full disclosure, I think to my students, I've always told people this, I'm a proponent of getting the vaccinations. I know some people are not, and I respect, that point of view as well. Jason, how are people faring in your county, and how about yourself, if you don't mind sharing, during the COVID?
Well, we had, first of all, I think North Carolina is among the nation's leaders in distributing the vaccine and getting people vaccinated, and even our county. And what I would say about that is because of our county health departments. I mean, we have several. Well, each county, of course, has its own health department, but we have one health department that covers our 3 smallest counties, and they've done a wonderful job in getting those vaccines out quickly. We were hit pretty hard. We had about half our sheriff's department. We couldn't have court in most of December because most of the sheriff's office had COVID, and so there weren't enough bailiffs to man the courtroom. One older bailiff, his wife got it from him, and she eventually died. And that was just before Christmas. It was really awful. A lot of the clerk's office had COVID as well, and so they ended up having to split them all up, and half of the clerks worked one week, and then half of the clerks worked the other week, which really, hindered the work that the clerk's office was able to do. And in one of my neighboring counties, Martin County, we had a lawyer who's 71 years old. He was not in great health, but he wasn't dying until he got COVID, and that was back last summer. And he's a guy that I really I learned a lot from him, and I kind of consider him a mentor, and I really miss him. So I was pretty serious about COVID. Still am. We wear masks in the courtroom. We wear masks during the court proceedings. Anywhere in the courthouse, you have to wear a mask. Lots of cleaning, things put in place. But as soon as the vaccine was available to me, I jumped at my opportunity to get it.
And Jason, would you be willing to share with us, how did you feel after you got the shots?
So I had the Moderna vaccine, and I went first time, well, both times. I had a little bit of fever. I felt pretty crappy for at least 8 or 12 hours, each time. My arm hurt a lot, but those symptoms go away pretty quickly. So well worth it.
Did you feel like, oh, sure, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. Did you feel like a weight was lifted off your shoulders in the sense that, I think we were all living under some fear for the past year, right?
Oh, yeah.
Are we going to get it? Is one of our loved ones going to get it? Did you feel like some of that, being lifted?
Oh, absolutely. I feel a lot better. Our court has resumed, and again, we're still taking precautions, but yes, I just don't feel as worried as I did and it's not for me. I'm pretty healthy, I think. You know, I'm probably a candidate if I got COVID. Most likely scenario would be I would recover. But my family and other friends and their families, I'd really hate that my legal assistant is older. I'd really hate to spread it to anybody else. So, but yeah, I really, having had the vaccine, not that I've changed my behavior much. We're not going out partying, but I just don't. I feel a lot better going out in public. I feel a lot better talking to clients in court and that sort of thing. Absolutely.
Thank, thank you for that. A question here. This is, can you tell us any interesting matters or matter that you've handled during your career? Something that, that I don't know. I don't want to say entertaining, but might be informative, right, for our students.
Well, you want to hear my miniature horse story, do you?
Oh, oh, I would love to hear the miniature horse story.
So for a long time, when I first started in private practice, I didn't want to do criminal law because I'd been a public defender and I was really tired of it. But anyway, I got talked into getting back on the appointed list and representing the poor people who were charged with crimes. And so in Martin County, which is where lots of crazy things happen, I was appointed to this gentleman who was charged with crime against nature. Now, as I know, you practice criminal law for a long time. Lots of times the crime against nature statute was used to target homosexuals and, just kind of go after them unfairly, I think. But this was not that situation. This was a true crime against nature because the allegation was, and this happened, I saw the video. There was a farmer who owned a farm up there, and he raised miniature horses. And he noticed that the tails of the miniature horses were being, clipped off or at least cut down. So the hair was very short on the tails of these miniature horses. So the farmer decided he would try to figure out what happened. So he set up a video camera and recorded the barn. And turns out one of his farm hands was going in there at night, and there's a little short guy, so he would take a little, even though it's a miniature horse, he would take a little stool and put it up to the back of the horse, and he'd clip the tail off, and he would have sex with the horse. And so he obviously was prosecuted for that, and we had a sentencing hearing, and the judge could barely hold it together. The judge was laughing at it as the district attorney is summarizing what all happened, and he's saying things about, that there's money due for restitution based on the veterinarian who had to come out with a black light and look for semen on the horse, and that sort of thing. And so our judge is almost about to fall down laughing about that. The guy got probation. He was not any kind of career criminal. So he received a probationary judgment.
I hope counseling as well, Jason.
Yeah, I think he was ordered to do some sort of sex offender assessment and then follow any recommended treatment, for that. So yeah, that was among the more memorable cases I've ever been involved in. I've had many though. I wish I could remember all of them that are so funny.
Yeah,
I had a lady who she used a stolen bank card to pay her bail bondsman to get her out of jail on worthless check charges. So she's charged with worthless checks, which is the lowest level misdemeanor there is. So she commits a felony by using someone else's bank card to pay her bondsman to get her out of jail on these things.
Think about your cycles.
Talk about making a problem worse.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, and but to be compassionate, right? It's this poor woman, right? I'm guessing, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I just found
poverty is about the root of almost everything that comes through the court system. I thought of another story. There was one of our judges. So there was a Hispanic gentleman who was in court, And he was just being advised of his right to a lawyer, and his case was being continued to some other later date. And he was wearing a shirt. Well, anyway, the judge calls him up, and is asking him, did you want a lawyer? And the guy's nodding his head, but it's clear he doesn't really understand him. But anyway, the judge notices he's got a shirt on that says like shithead university or something like that, And I mean, it's just some kind of profane. And so the judge said, "Now, sir, don't you wear that shirt when you come back." And so the guy's looking at him, and it was right at that time the judge finally realized, hey, this guy doesn't understand a thing I'm saying. And so the judge, he turns to the bailiff who speaks Spanish, and so the bailiff, talked to him. And so, the guy bought the shirt he got the shirt at Goodwill or something like that. Had no idea what it said, and so the judge is, laughing. Is, oh, I'm sorry. Again, poverty. That's why the guy was wearing a profane shirt in the courtroom.
We talk about intersectionality all the time, and poverty, right, is one of those huge dimensions that you're obviously dealing with, right? With the population and in the court system. Jason, thank you for the themes. I think kind of running through your stories there, right? You're right. The common thread, right? I'm hearing that. Education. Would you kind of throw, lack of education?
Lack of education, of course, causes poverty. But drug use. I mean.
Yeah.
Sure, rich people use drugs, but generally when they intersect with the court, I mean, the people who intersect with the court system based on drugs are poor people. Domestic violence, same thing. Rich people commit domestic violence all the time, but generally the people who end up in court for domestic violence problems are poor people. And you just go down there, and unless you're just you're sitting in traffic court with for watching all the people with speeding tickets. Almost any other kind of court proceeding that goes on down there involves poor people.
Jason, it's interesting that you brought that up. Real quick, I'm just going to give you this anecdote. I was speaking to many years ago state attorney friends, and we had talked about, if and I'll give the example, if my mom or dad had gotten a fight, or hit each other, right? I think maybe in our little county too, maybe there were 2 or 3 deputies available at any time, right? Patrolling the whole county. It was more peacekeeping than it was policing, in those days, right? But my family would never have contacted. And I'm not saying this is appropriate or right? But we didn't want outsiders involved in our business. This never happened. I'm just giving this as an example, right? Picking on my own family, but we would never have gotten, the what we call the authorities, right, involved.
That's right. And social services is really where you see that. To follow up on your example, if I was, when I was a child, if some police officer had ridden by my house and saw me wandering around, outside unaccompanied by a parent, which probably wouldn't have happened, but if it did, I wouldn't have ended up in foster care. I mean, the police officer would stop and talk to my parents and figure, okay, these are educated people, and okay, the kid just got out, and it won't happen again, and I'm not going to worry about it. But poor people are different. Poor people are treated differently anyway. And so that's who you see in the courtroom.
I think your comments right now, particularly, are very, very timely. I wish we could go more into depth, on that. But thank you for that observation. I feel like I wanted to ask you about legal pet peeves. And I know you, Jason. I know myself. I have many legal pet peeves. I could mention, equality, right? Lack of justice sometimes, right? As you mentioned, sometimes could be, over justicing, right? On it. But what do you have any particular legal pet peeves, over the years that have kind of irked you, a little bit?
Can I beat the drum? Can I beat the drum for poor people again?
Of course. That's we need a forum for this.
The access to court. I mean, as you know, you've been a public defender. You've also worked in private practice, and what different justice poor people receive versus people with resources. And if you can afford to hire the best attorney in town, or the 3 best attorneys in town, to represent you, then you are much likely to receive what you would consider justice than some person who's not able to do those things. And so, I just think, and this was a big thing when I worked at Legal Aid, and Legal Aid, pushes this a lot, which they should. That the whole part about access to justice, people in my area, there are a lot of poor, people can't afford attorneys. That's a pet peeve of mine. Someone wants my services but can't pay me. I do a lot of work that's that's not uncompensated, which is fine. Of course, I do a lot of state appointed work too, which could, because people can't afford to pay anything. But anyway, those people, they don't have, if they can't afford to pay me, I can't represent everybody for free, and I'm not, and no one else is either. And so, lots of times those people, the access to the courtroom is foreclosed to them. There's no other avenue. And there are places like Legal Aid, but they can't handle. I mean, Legal Aid has 5 attorneys, I think, for our 5. No, I think they have 10 counties or 9 or 10 counties.
Wow.
Now. Right, and 5 attorneys. So and those attorneys are supposed to cover all kinds of different areas of the law. So, it's an impossible task. That's an impossible task. But that's a pet peeve. I mean, that bothers me. That bothers me quite a bit.
Yeah, I completely sympathize with that. No, thank you for articulating that too, because it's so important. I never want to lose sight, and I tell everybody this, I never want to lose our compassion, right? I think in the court system, civility, is something. My pet peeve has been, sometimes I don't see the most civil discourse, is the way that I would put it. Yeah, right.
Well, and I'll mention that too. I actually just thought of that before you mentioned that. We have great judges. We have 4 district court judges in our district, and they are absolutely fabulous. They treat people with respect. They live in the community. They don't think that they're above people. I mean, I can't say enough good things about each of the 4 of them. And we have a great Superior Court judge too. And the Superior Court judges, they handle the higher level felonies and big money civil cases. We have a great Superior Court judge too. But in North Carolina, Superior Court judges travel. And so, they kind of ride a circuit in a way. Yeah. They don't often, you have a resident Superior Court judge, but they may be assigned, several counties over, and then we get some other Superior Court judge from some other county. And far too many of them, treat people. They're imperious. They treat people with contempt. They don't try to be fair to people. They're not even civil to people. They ask all these invasive questions and they just treat people poorly. And I cannot. I try not to go to Superior Court. Most of my work is in district court these days, and that's one of the main reasons, is because I got tired of seeing it over and over when I did high level felonies. The way folks are treated by some of those judges, I just could not abide it. And so rather than, stay in there and fight, I just forget it. I'd rather go where I'm treated well, my client's treated well, at least with respect. Send somebody to jail, that's fine. That's what you have to do sometimes under structured sentencing. But you can do it in a respectful way, rather than to just denigrate somebody and, act like they're the scum of the earth.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that point. And I've certainly encountered, what you're experiencing. I will say this, I think our circuit is very civil, and I think it is very important here. We just had a discussion with another attorney, Peg O'Connor, and she had mentioned that we have a very high degree of civility. In fact, such that when attorneys come from other circuits, Jason, they say that they notice it here. And it's really about respect. I'm with you. I've always thought the best judges are those that engage in dialogues almost. And, there's the give and take, and it's, rather than, I know we put them on a little bit of a platform, right, in court, and it's designed that way, for obvious reasons with the black robe on, it is stylized for a reason. But I've always felt like the judges that engage, that listen carefully, compassionately, right, and then try to craft whatever the decision is or the sentence. Would you agree with this?
Absolutely.
with what is truly needed by listening to the
Yeah,
parties, right? And as attorneys, we make our argument the best pitch we can, and sometimes it's like stitching together a Frankenstein monster here, right, with the facts that we're given, right? Not always completely on your side, right? But you do the best that you can, but almost always you can find that inner kernel like, Judge, I think this is what is really needed here. And I've noticed that that's resonated, with judges, over the years. So I'm going on and on, but this is your floor, Jason, but I think you do a very good job of that. Every time we've talked about cases, you've said this is the holistic view. This is the inner thing, and it's in
sure.
poverty. This and this needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and that comes from my legal aid upbringing, because everyone who started, my first 5 years, because I'll remind folks that first 5 years I practiced, I was at legal aid. And, folks come to legal aid with a legal problem, but typically that's not the only problem they have. And so, and of course, running a private practice, I do so much work that involves social services. And again, people who are involved with social services have some legal problem. That's why I'm involved. But they also have other problems that they need taken care of too. And so you really do have to look at it holistically. You can't just solve the immediate legal problem because that's not going to help them. It may help them today, but it's not going to help them next week or next year. You're just going to be right back in the same position that they were before if you don't solve some of these underlying issues. And so, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Thank you, Jason. Inspirations. Can I ask you what have been your inspirations in life, and particularly your legal career?
Hmm.
I know, hard question.
Well, I mean, I would go back again. I left legal aid in 2003. It was, no, wait, it was 2002. It was April Fool's Day, 2002. I left legal aid that day and started working in the public defender's office. So it's been a long time since I've been gone from there. But, those legal aid lawyers, people who are devoted to just, they went to law school for the right reason, right? Because to help people, that's what they would say. And that's what I would say. And that's what I think I do. And that's what legal aid attorneys do. And they get paid almost nothing. I mean, it's so far below the pale what legal aid attorneys make. And they make more now than they did when I was there. But, compared to attorneys in private practice, even compared to people who work for a district attorney's office or the public defender's office, even legal aid lawyers are so underpaid and overworked, and they do such a good job because they are devoted to it, and they're devoted to the causes that they help with, and to the individual clients they represent. And I am to this day, 19 years later, still inspired by those attorneys.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jason. My family, every time we think of Atticus Finch, we think of you. And it's an automatic,
Yeah, that was quite an honor. Yes.
well, we really consider you to be just incredibly fair, incredibly just, and really you treat everybody very equally and nice, and with civility. And I can't think of a higher accolade. Now, when I say Atticus Finch, I meant the original Atticus Finch, right? In the first novel, right, and the
Now,
film.
it's funny. It's funny. I read, I did not read that as a child. I didn't read it in high school. I didn't read it in college. And so the first time I ever read To Kill a Mockingbird was during my first year as a lawyer.
Wow.
And so it was probably good that I did that though. Because I think it had a bigger impact on me then because I was a lawyer. I had just become a lawyer, but I hadn't got far enough in my career to be a fully formed lawyer. And so, Atticus Finch, Harper Lee did a great job with that. We're not going to talk about the second book because that was not, I don't think Harper Lee would have wanted us to read that anyway, because that was not her fully formed Atticus Finch. But anyone would do well to pattern themselves after Atticus Finch, the character in that book also.
Yeah, thank you. I we could go on and on about Atticus and the qualities that he embedded, in the what's the right word for it? Is it Quixotic battle
Yeah,
that he was facing, right? Is that right? Yeah,
yeah, I do feel like Don Quixote many times.
yeah.
Uh,
You go in there and you do the best you can, right? Each time, for every client, with your training and skills. Any special advice from your unique perspective for our students and listeners?
well, do you mean, do you mean towards students who are thinking about going into the law, or just college students in general?
Oh gosh, I'll open it up to you. Yeah, what would you? Yeah, however you want to comment, either group. Um,
I mean, if you're going to law school, go for the right reason. That's the only. And I really don't know why I went to law school. I guess I would look back and think, well, I mean, I had a business degree, but I didn't want to work for a bank, and so, I was always more drawn to the humanities, and uh, I'd taken some legal history courses in college and so forth, and I like that kind of thing. And I really thought, well, what else am I going to do? Um, but it was because I wanted to help people, and that's why really people should become lawyers. Uh, if you want to make a lot of money, you might be able to do that as an attorney. It just depends. It depends on what kind of law you practice, and it depends on where you practice. There are, I would submit, many easier ways to make a lot of money. Different career paths are probably more lucrative, and it's probably getting less lucrative every day to be a lawyer because there are a lot of us around at this point. And folks, even state, government agencies, private employers don't have to pay quite as much as they used to because there's so many lawyers out there in the marketplace. But so again, don't go to law school if just because you want to make a lot of money. You really need to go because you want to help people. Because that's all we do. I mean, we are helpers. Lawyers are helpers. In the same way social workers are, at least the law I practice. The same way social workers are, police people are. Doctors are helpers. I mean, and people are always going to need you and need your advice and want you to help them. And you have to learn to say no. You have to learn. You have to have some kind of work-life balance in your life. You can't practice law 24/7. You really need to be able to turn it off. But those are my thoughts on that. I don't know if that's very helpful or not.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very helpful. Yeah, go for the right reasons. One thing I have to follow up on, and I remember what you said, and you've been much more critical of law school, right? In the 3 years, and I know we were debating, right? Could we do like what is it, more like a what would it be, like a 3 and 3, or can we combine that undergrad program into, right? I
Yeah, I
don't know.
think the old apprenticeship, the old apprenticeship model probably worked the best.
Yeah, yeah. Knowing what you went through, the 3 years of law school, I remember what you said about that. And you talk about leaving me speechless, Jason, definitely. But that's what I love is your candor. And you've always been so direct with the advice to my pre-law students. When you visited the office, they have loved it because rarely do they get that honest perspective. Can I ask you a question? If you had to do it all over again, knowing you'd end up where you are now, would you do it?
I mean, probably just because what the hell else am I going to do? I'm a helper. I want to help people, and this is
You
probably the
do.
best way to do that. I guess I think I told you. I sat on this panel with someone who put it together, and she was a social worker, but she's actually heading to law school. But anyway, she asked the question. What would you have done had you not been a lawyer? And the only thing I can think is maybe a social worker. So I could do the same thing I do now, but get paid less, and be respected even less, even less in the community. Um, yeah,
It's
I just I live. What else really? What else would I do? What else would you do? what else would you do if you were not a lawyer? I mean, because you've done a lot of stuff in your career. You've done, a bigger variety of things than I have. But you have to feel good about the things that you've done. You've helped a lot of poor people. What would you have done had you not been a lawyer?
It's really interesting because there were two things. Remember when I was in law school, I think you guys were actually joking that I ended up staying in Gainesville when with the international background, international studies, right? We thought I'm the most likely probably to, do multinational contracts or, that those kind of things, right?
Good
Um,
point.
but yeah, what was interesting to me is we did make Gainesville a home, after law school. Hard, the amount of talent that's pouring out of law school. You know that, Jason.
Yeah.
You throw a rock in this town, you're going to hit a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, right? And I mean, and the law school keeps pouring them out, right?
Yeah.
That's
All,
good.
all, all of those people can sue you. So watch where you throw your rocks.
There you go. Yeah, not a great idea. As your lawyer, I would, right? And Jason would give you the same advice. Please don't throw rocks at people. In general, yeah. We should write these little life lessons. Don't overdrink. Don't throw rocks. Stay away from crystal meth in general. These things that we've encountered, right? Try to make a little bit of money. Be a little bit educated. All of these things, but important life lessons. That's a great question. What would I do? I love nature. And park ranger was something that always fascinated me. When I was a kid, you know me, like hiking. I like
Yeah.
nature, like being out, outdoors. I also love traveling internationally. I probably would have loved living abroad. Japan was fantastic, and maybe some of the other countries, would have been fantastic. Um, Civil service, if I was not married, maybe working in the embassies and things,
Mhm.
having to move your
I
family
almost
around.
Did I
Yeah.
tell you in law school that I almost took that exam, the civil service? I
Oh,
thought I was signed up
you
for
would
it.
have been fantastic.
Well, yeah, and then I was signed up for it, and I think that was when I got the internship in DC, and so I, went ahead and did that instead, and just never took the exam. I want to say that, but yeah, I seriously considered that because that did seem like a pretty exciting thing, and I mean, I was unattached at the time, no, I wasn't married, didn't have children, and so I could have lived anywhere. But I don't know. Would I rather do that than do what I do now? Probably not. Probably not. I kind of like living in a small town, with my family and doing that kind of thing most days, as opposed to traveling all over the world. I don't know if I would have wanted to make that a career.
Yeah.
Look, I like nature too, and I thought for years I wanted to be a zoologist or a veterinarian or
Yeah.
something
Oh,
like
sure.
that.
Sure.
But am I really going to study all those sciences for the number of years that it would take to get a degree? I don't think so. I did great in science when I was in high school, and even the two sciences I took in college. But was I willing to devote all my study to that? No way, no way.
I always said Anatomy 101, is a really interesting class, and making it through it, titled something different here. You and I know memorizing, I can't remember how many thousands of body parts, right?
Mhm.
And different things, it's just, and then regurgitating it, for exams. But I respect, yeah, medicine engineers. You know what? I can actually say this, and I want to give due respect for my parents because I've heard some parents come in here and go, I said, oh yeah, what does your dad do? Oh, he's a lawyer, doc, sometimes, and oh, and we could even reverse it, but what does your mom do? Oh, she's just a homemaker, and I said, don't ever put that down.
Mhm.
That is one of the hardest, most underappreciated jobs on earth.
Absolutely.
And and I thank my mother to this day, right, for being there for us, and
Absolutely.
I mean, you talk about something that is, I forgot the scale that's been done on this. Have you ever seen where they try to quantify it? And it
Oh,
is,
right. And yeah, they come up with how much you
it,
have to pay for all of the tasks that a stay-at-home
yeah,
spouse does during the day or during a week. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
it's amazing.
In terms of, that's actually something I just want to give a shout out there for homemakers, as well. And lifestyle balance there, for us, families are important, right? And you used to be the more, gosh, I felt like I was going down that, defined roles as before. And now, we are seeing more males, right? Staying at home, and taking care of the children. I think it's wonderful. I think the opportunities, right? Opening up across the board, to everybody,
Yeah, I think it is too, but that's just one more job I'm not qualified to do. You know,
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I would be a failure, yes,
yeah, right, right.
and have
I
been.
feel like for example, during the pandemic, I mean, our courts were closed for 3 months or 2.5 months. And so, my wife stayed home mostly, and she's a lawyer as well, as you know, Stephanie. Um,
Yeah.
she stayed home because her office was closed completely. Obviously, I run my own office, so I would come in the office most days, but she would need to go in at least once a week. And so, I could barely handle being at home for one day, one weekday,
Yeah.
one day during the week. And my daughter, as you know, is 10 years old now. She's very independent. She can do lots of things on her own, and she insists on that. But yet, I can only handle about one day a week. Any more than that, I'd have to resign my position.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I no, yeah, absolutely true on that. Rita, I'm looking over here and I have a couple of quick questions. I'm going to help you through these. But favorite music, you got me to jazz. And I'm just going to kind of throw that out there to you. You were a jazz aficionado. I was borrowing, I can't remember how many albums from you. In fact, rather than just being specific songs, you really got me turned on to the albums and the longer form, and the way that they were expressed. It feels quaint to talk this way now about the albums, right? And how
Right.
cohesive that they were. What are your favorite artists?
Well, North Carolina's own Thelonious Monk from Rocky Mount,
Oh
John
yeah,
Coltrane from Hamlet, North Carolina. Now, both of those guys, of course, they were born here, they had family here, they mainly grew up in New York, so I don't think North Carolina can take
talk
credit for too much, but
talk about your giants of
right.
yeah of jazz. Yeah, it's oh gosh, we could do the whole Ken Burns thing, right? In jazz, if we needed to, right?
It
On
was a
that
great series.
great series. Films. What are some inspirational or films, Jason, that you like? We may have
Now,
to do a
here's
part
another
three or
funny
three.
one.
Okay,
Here's another funny one. I never watched The Paper Chase until I was in law school. I know you know The Paper Chase, great movie.
love it.
John Houseman's in that movie. Um, he was a great, he was Professor Kingsbury, is that his name?
Kingsfield, I
Kingsfield,
believe.
yes,
I think I'm.
Kingsfield, yeah. Kind of set the standard for
Yeah.
how people think of law professors. I never watched that movie till I was in law school, but I love it. It's great, great movie.
It, I
Uh,
always tell everybody that is the most accurate portrayal, and I know it's Harvard Law, right? I think it is.
sure,
Yeah, one of the Ivy Leagues. Harvard, I
Harvard,
believe, and
Harvard.
contracts, right? Specifically, contracts law. Just absolutely incredible, movie. Thank you for recommending that. That is another. I was very appreciated, but I think our students don't know about it. But watch
Right,
that. You need to watch that if you're thinking about law school. And
absolutely.
I tell them too, why don't you audit a class at law school or two, at least,
Yeah.
right? Learn what it's going to be like before you subject yourself, as you said, to 3 years, right? Of
Well,
this.
and the other thing I would say too, I don't think I'd ever walked into a courtroom until I was a practicing attorney, which is ridiculous. I mean, I do remember going as a part of some class, I think it was family law class. We had to go and observe something, but I observed a mediation. I didn't even observe a trial. So,
Right.
I mean, so I really had no idea what I was getting myself into until I got a job as a lawyer, which is really the backward way to do things. So yeah, I would definitely encourage someone before going to law school even to go and watch a court proceeding. Court proceedings almost
Thank
always
you.
are public. You can go, and they're sometimes
I,
entertaining. They're often entertaining, in fact.
They are often entertaining, and as you said, I was very impressed when I was in Asheville, North Carolina, right? I was impressed. I went down. We had a class project, had to go down and watch some court hearings, right? And it was traffic court, Of course, because that's always ongoing in Asheville, right? With the situation there, and I think they even threw parking tickets in there. But it was interesting to hear. But what I really enjoyed was seeing how the judges, the attorneys, just the people coming in on these tickets interacted with each other. There was a lot of civility, a lot of compassion, a lot of care, and they were just. It was a wonderful dialogue, that was there. It impressed me so much, that they were joking, laughing, right? Well, I mean, it's a traffic ticket. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, the person even can't pay. It was community service hours, right? So
Sure.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of understanding on that, but I agree with you on that. They're texting me. This is awful, Jason. This always happens to us. It's my turn this time to tell you.
Ah,
They're texting me. I have to go do a notary up front, but
all right.
you've probably already done this. Closing thoughts. Any value or lesson? You've taught at me so many things already. I don't even know if you have to. Care about others, be compassionate. Any overriding thing you want to leave a last thought with our students?
Well, I feel bad because I wrote down before while we were preparing for this, I wrote down the what we used to consider the public defender motto, which is no good deed goes unpunished.
So
I
true.
mean, as you know, we see that often in court. I don't know if that's the last thing I want to leave people with, but it's still a
Well,
truism.
you had mentioned, we had talked about Atticus Finch, a fictional character, but Clarence Darrow, you also remind me of his dedication and compassion, Jason. And yeah,
Those are
another
high
individual.
ideals.
Yeah, it's just amazing dialogue, Jason. I can't thank you enough. I'm so sorry to cut you off. Duty calls
I
intrudes
enjoyed it.
again. It's my day job, primary job. Here is to help our students and everything. Jason, I would love to talk film, music, all poverty, intersectionality, all of these things, at some point again. If I can, I'm not going to hold you to a promise right now. We'll call it an aspiration between us. But if we can have another
Good.
dialogue, I
No,
would
happy
I would
to.
love to. Thank you again, Jason. It's such an honor to have you, and I wish you the very best in your legal career. Thank you for sharing the wisdom with our students.
Thanks, Layne. I appreciate it. Good talking to you as always.
You take care.
All right. See ya.